Today, I'm giving you guys the new top 3 best builds in NBA 2K22 Next Gen. Before we do hop into things though, if you guys could do me a quick favor and like and subscribe, it helps me out so much. It's literally free and takes 5 seconds. So as I said, I'm giving you guys the top 3 best builds, and this will probably be the best threes lineup in the entire game. So first, for the first build, for this build, we're going to be making the point guard and ball handler build. Obviously, for the position, you do need to be a point guard. For the body settings, I would recommend dropping down the height to 5'11". I mean, I'm not gonna lie, faster and shorter guards are just the meta this year. The biggest issue that I have with short guards is on the defensive end, but as you guys are gonna see, the defense on this build is actually quite good. For the weight, you're gonna want to drop this down to 167 pounds. This way, as you can see, you get a 95 speed and acceleration. And then with Gym Rat or the Gatorade drills, you're able to get a 99. It just won't tell you you get the 99, but in game, it will actually give you the +4. And then for the wingspan, you're going to want to drop this down to 6 foot. This way you can get a 99 3-pointer in mid-range. So starting things off with the finishing attributes, first for the close shot, you're going to want this at a 56. For the driving layup, you're going to want this at a 55. And for the driving dunk, you're going to want this at a 72. Obviously, this build's dunking and finishing is not good at all. But in my opinion though, you are going to want at least a 72 driving dunk. This way on a wide open fast break, you can at least dunk a little bit. And you don't have to just like take a mid-range or something. Moving on to the shooting attributes. For the 3-pointer, you're going to want this maxed out at a 99. And for the mid-range, you're going to want this at an 86. This build is going to have 35 shooting badges. You can get the other 5 to have 40 shooting badges, but I'm not going to lie, having the extra 5 doesn't really do anything. It looks a lot cooler, yes, but you're going to be shooting pretty much the exact same with 35 versus 40. And then moving on to the playmaking attributes, first for the pass accuracy, you're going to want this at an 86. For the ball handling, you're going to want this at a 96. And for the speed of the ball, you're going to want this at a 93. You're going to have in total 35 playmaking badges. And this build's playmaking is just all around going to be crazy. And plus with 99 acceleration, you're going to be speed boosting so quickly. And then moving on to the defensive / rebounding attributes. For the perimeter defense, you're going to want this at an 86. And for the steal, you're going to want this at a 91. You'll have in total 21 defensive / rebounding badges. This build can hold its own on the defensive end. It's not going to be your ideal twos build since you are 5'11", but you have gold clamps, gold pickpocket, as well as Hall of Fame interceptor, so you're going to be in passing lanes for Pro-Am and Rec Center. Ideally, when using this build, you do have a lockdown to go with it, but it's not a build that's just going to be doing absolutely nothing on the defensive end. And then moving on to the physicals, for the speed, you're going to want this at a 91. For the acceleration, you're going to want this at a 95. For the vert, you're going to want this at a 54. And then finally, for the stamina, bump this up to a 98. The reason why we have speed lower than acceleration is because speed helps you moving around off ball, while acceleration helps you speed boost faster. So definitely, acceleration is way more important, especially for a point guard build. This build in total has 99 badges, which is very good, and it can honestly do everything that you need a point guard build to be able to do. Its 3-point hunting and passing abilities are honestly top tier. It can dunk a little bit if you have a wide open fast break. And then obviously the defense isn't amazing or anything, but it's not that bad. If you do want free throw on this build, what I would recommend doing is dropping down your stamina to a 95. And then next, drop down your mid-range to an 84. And this way you can also get an 84 free throw. So moving on to the takeovers. For the first takeover, you have to go with limitless range. And then for the secondary takeover, I'm honestly going to go with limitless range again. In my opinion, double limitless range is one of the most overpowered things in the entire game. You can honestly just run around and spot up from anywhere if you want to. And then as you guys can see, I built a playmaking shot creator, which makes a ton of sense as a name. Moving on to build number 2. Okay, so moving on to the second build of this video. For this build, we are going to be making the lockdown build. Also, if you want another lockdown build video, it's in the card up above. The build that I show you guys in that video is a little bit taller, and I'll also show you guys a little bit of gameplay to go with it. So moving on to the body settings, first for the height, you're going to want to go with 6'5". For a perimeter lockdown, I think this is probably the best height. For the weight, you're going to want to drop this down to 187 pounds. And then for the wingspan, bump this up 1 to 6'11". These body settings just allow you to get very good all-around stats. And also your defensive rebounds at an 81, so you can get silver rebound chaser. First, for the close shot, you're going to want this at a 54. Next, for the driving layup, you're going to want this at a 64. And then finally, for the driving dunk, you're going to want this at an 84. This build's not a build that's just going to be dunking on everyone. I mean, it's a lockdown build, so you're not really going to be taking a lot of dunks as it is. But unless you're a really short meta point guard build, I think you need to at least have a little bit of dunking, so that way on fast breaks and stuff, you can dunk if you want to. So moving on to the shooting attributes. First, for the three-pointer, you're going to want this maxed out at an 86. And then for the mid-range, you're going to want this at a 73. In total, you will have 24 shooting badges. This build is able to green very, very consistently. And even though on a lockdown build, all you're really going to be doing is spotting up from the corner, this build can also kind of create its own shot. So moving on to the playmaking attributes. First, for the pass accuracy, you're going to want this at a 70. For the ball handling, you're going to want this at an 86. And for the speed with the ball, you're going to want this at an 83. You're going to have 25 playmaking badges in total. As I said, this build can kind of create its own shot and can also move around the court and pass very well, so that way everything's just not getting stolen. Moving on to the defensive / rebounding attributes. First, for the perimeter defense, you're going to want this at a 94. For the steal, you're going to want this at a 90. For the block, you're going to want this at a 65. For the offensive rebound, you're going to want this at a 51. And then finally, for the defensive rebound, you're going to want this at an 81. I know 25 badges doesn't sound like a lot of badges, but when you take into account that you have a 94 perimeter and a 90 steal, as well as Hall of Fame clamps and Hall of Fame interceptor, this really does look more like a lockdown build. On this build, I decided to more so focus on the key Hall of Fame badges and having high ratings of the things that are important, such as steal and such as perimeter defense, rather than just going for a crazy badge count. And then moving on to the physicals. For the speed, you're going to want this at an 87. And for the acceleration, max this out at a 90. For the vertical, bump this up to a 75. And for the stamina, bump this up to a 95. In my opinion, having these good physicals are key. One of the biggest appeals of a 6'5" lockdown build is just how easily it's able to move around the court. Compared to something like a 6'8" build, this build's able to move around the court much more easily and stick with those really short, fast guards. Also, you do have a few ratings left. I would just recommend throwing it on to free throw. This build only has 88 badges, which isn't that crazy. It honestly could have had way more badges, but on this build, I decided to focus on the main and key attributes, as well as the key Hall of Fame badges. If you do want free throw on this build, what I'd recommend doing is dropping down your stamina to a 92, also drop down your speed 1 rating, and then you can get a 76 free throw. So moving on to the takeovers. For the first takeover, I'm going to go with Extreme Clamps. And then for takeover number 2, I'm going to go with Spot Up Precision. These are just overall pretty selfless takeovers. And then as you guys can see, I built a 2-way 3-point shot creator, which is honestly such a cool name. Moving on to the final build of the video. So moving on to the third and final build of this video. And for this build, we're going to be making a tall build, but also a build that can shoot consistently. So first, for the body settings, we're going to bump up our height to 7'1". I know this is quite tall, especially compared to last year. Being 6'9" is still a very viable option, but in my opinion, you are going to want to go taller, since more and more from what I've seen, people are running like 7'3" big man builds, and those builds are going to be grabbing every rebound over the shorter but faster big man builds. For the weight, you're going to want to drop this down to 223 pounds. I'll explain this more in a little bit. And then for the wingspan, you're going to want this at 7'10". This longer wingspan is super helpful for dunking on people and getting blocks and rebounds. And also, you have to go with 223 for your weight, because if you don't do that, your defensive rebound is going to drop. And if it does drop below 91, you're going to be unable to get gold rebound chaser. So moving on to the attribute screen. First, for finishing, you're going to want your close shot at a 94. For the driving layup, you're going to want this at a 74. For the driving dunk, you're going to want this at a 75. For the standing dunk, you're going to want this at a 90. For the post control, you're going to want this at an 85. You're going to have in total 31 finishing badges, which is very good. Moving on to shooting. First, for the 3-pointer, you're going to want to max this out, of course. And for the mid-range, you're going to want to bump this up to an 80. In total, you're going to have 21 shooting badges. If you know your jump shot, this build is going to be able to green very, very consistently. You're not going to be making a ton of whites, but as long as you're able to time your jump shot correctly, you're going to be able to shoot. So going down to the pass accuracy, you're going to want to bump this up to an 85. This is absolutely perfect because this way you can have 14 playmaking badges, as well gold bullet passer and Hall of Fame break starter. Next, for the defensive / rebounding. First, for your interior defense, you're going to want this at a 94. For the perimeter, you're going to want this at a 58. For the steal, you're going to want this at a 60. For the block, you're going to want this at a 98. For the offensive rebound, you're going to want this at a 90. And for the defensive rebound, you're going to want this at a 91. You're going to have 36 defensive badges, which is absolutely crazy. As well as gold brick wall, Hall of Fame intimidator, Hall of Fame rim protector, gold rebound chaser, and also silver interceptor, which isn't bad at all. And then moving on to your physicals, you're going to want your speed, acceleration, acceleration, and strength all maxed out, your vertical at a 56, and your stamina at a 93. If you guys want to, you can upgrade your vertical to a 75 to get big man contact dunks. But personally, from what I found, it doesn't really make that big of a difference. This is definitely just the way I play. I don't want just some RNG contact animation to determine whether or not I make the shot. Also, you do have one rating. I would just recommend throwing it on perimeter defense. That's probably the most useful thing you can throw it on. This build has 102 badges, which is crazy. And it can honestly do everything that you need a build to be able to do. Its passing is incredible, its dunking is very good, its defensive / rebounding attributes and badges are also amazing. And also, if you know your jump shot, you're going to be knocking down jumpers consistently. If you do want free throw on this build, what you're going to want to do is first drop down the perimeter defense 1 rating. And then you're going to want to scroll up to driving layup and drop this down to a 60. Throw all of those ratings onto free throw and you can have a 74 free throw. If you're even considering playing Rec Center or Pro-Am, definitely go ahead and do this. So moving on to the takeovers, in my opinion, the best big man takeovers is first, See the Future, and second, Stuff Blocks. And then as you guys can see, I built a versatile paint beast, which is honestly such a common name for a big man build. Thank you guys so much for sticking around until the end of the video. I hope you did enjoy it, and if you did, like and subscribe to the channel. There's a dribble tutorial as well as a gameplay video of the best lockdown build. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'm out. Peace.